The Greater Toronto Area is home to around 15% of all Canadians. However, when it comes to Toronto's sports venues, it's not the quantity but the variety and uniqueness of them that's impressive. That being said, here are the stadiums and arenas of Toronto, Canada. We start off with Scotiabank Arena, which is right in the thick of the central business district. That's got to be one reason why it's the busiest arena in the country. The other reasons being that it's home to the two most valuable teams in the city. And of course it hosts a ton of shows of musical and comical and theatrical variety. Maybe even hot dog eating contests, I don't know. Much like a couple of other venues you'll see in this video, this arena was incorporated into a much older building. Although in this case it's really just the facade of the old Canada Post building that was retained. I can't imagine a postal building and a sports arena have a comparable layout, so that's understandable. But yeah, I do always appreciate when remnants of the past are preserved. Situated over on the west side of the CN Tower is Rogers Centre, home to the Blue Jays, who are currently the only Canadian Major League Baseball team. Originally this place was known as the Sky Dome, and for good reason. It is a dome, more or less, but it's a dome that can open up to reveal the sky. Perfect name really. I don't know why they couldn't just call it the Rogers Sky Dome. The roof was the world's first fully retractable motorized roof. The stadium was actually designed to host football as well as baseball. The Toronto Argonauts of the CFL played here from its inception until 2015. If that wasn't surprising enough, there was an even more unlikely tenant, that being the Toronto Raptors, who played here while Scotiabank Arena was being built. Mattamy Athletic Centre. This arena has a very interesting history. It was technically opened in 2012, however it's located within a building known as the Maple Leaf Gardens, which was built in 1931. As the name suggests, it was the former home of the Maple Leafs. Wait a minute, why aren't they called the Maple Leaves? Because, anyway, they basically elevated the rink and now there's a bunch of shops on the ground floor, where the original rink was. It's pretty cool how they've done that. Part of the reason why they kept an arena here is that the upper tiers of seating were actually supporting the weight of that big roof. But also, the locals probably wouldn't have been too happy if it no longer had anything to do with hockey. BMO Field. This place started out as a fairly simple soccer-specific stadium back in the mid-2000s. Since then, it's not only gained a Canadian football team, but it's also gained plenty of amenities, such as increased seating and increased roof coverage. There was practically none originally. And those upgrades will continue, as it's set to be expanded prior to the 2026 World Cup, where it'll host some games. One thing that the original design had over the current stadium is the unobstructed view of the city skyline. But as the old saying goes, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You've just got to look at it and think to yourself, ooh, that's a nice tasty looking carrot cake right there. You wouldn't think it would taste nice, carrot cake, but it doesn't taste like carrot, it tastes like cake. Sobeys Stadium is the biggest tennis-specific stadium in Canada. It's one of the host venues of the Canadian Open. Sorry, the National Bank Open presented by Rogers. We can't upset the almighty Roger. Roger is infallible and all-powerful. You must love Roger. In terms of the stadium's design, the exterior looks like a parking garage. And like many tennis stadiums, the seating bowl is angular rather than curved. Interestingly, the same event is shared with Montreal. Last year, Toronto hosted the men's games, this year it'll host the women's. York Lions Stadium. For such a small stadium, this place has been featured on the channel quite a bit, because at one point it was home to two professional soccer teams, the York Lions varsity teams, and a professional rugby team. However, the latter has ceased to exist. It became popular with professional teams at right about the same time that they got rid of the running track and installed a synthetic turf field, much closer to this unique main stand here. Well, perhaps one of these stands is considered to be the main stand. Who knows? I shouldn't just assume. Coca-Cola Coliseum. If the Mac wasn't old enough for you, then perhaps the Coke is more to your liking. It's 10 years older. I don't think people actually call it the Coke, probably because it's had several names over the years. As is often the case with grand old arenas like this, it was originally built for non-sporting purposes, specifically the Canadian National Exhibition and the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair, two events that I believe are still going strong today, and are still held here, as well as at the surrounding buildings. Its main purpose though is of course ice hockey, because Canada. It's home to the Marlies, who are not a Maple Leafs ripoff, they are a Maple Leafs affiliate. Tucked away behind the main stand of Varsity Stadium is Varsity Arena. I suppose it's fitting that they have matching names, as they are both part of what is collectively known as the Varsity Centre, which also includes the Varsity Pavilion. This is yet another arena that is nearly 100 years old. Despite that, it has since its inception had no pillars obstructing the spectator's view. It was one of the first in the world to have such a design, and it was actually partially designed by a professor at the university, Thomas Loudon, who was not only an engineer but was heavily involved in the school's athletics program. He also designed the aforementioned main stand at Varsity Stadium. The University of Toronto is the biggest university in the city, yet still has a tiny football stadium, so you can tell that college sports, or U sports, are not quite as popular here as they are south of the border. But even though it's small, the facilities are decent, it's in good condition, and wow, it seems that no matter where you go in Toronto, the CN Tower is always watching you. They say that the almighty Roger lives on the top floor. Over on this side, spectators get a view of a different building, one known as the Gold Ring Centre for High Performance Sport. We see you, and the feeling is mutual because from the concourse in here, there's a great view of the football field. So on game day, if the weather outside is frightful, try to get yourself in here where it's probably delightful, I don't know. Anyway, if you were born with a name like Gold Ring, there's probably a lot of pressure on you to become financially successful, and the Gold Ring family clearly is. They partially funded the construction of this place, hence the name. I don't believe they are related to Goldfinger, the James Bond villain, although they have been known to associate. Allan Lamport Stadium. This place was built on the site of a former women's prison, and as hard as it is to believe, the prison actually looked a lot better than the stadium does. At least in my opinion. They don't build prisons like they used to. But yeah, the two stands of this place are bare bones and grey. The artificial turf field has markings for field hockey, soccer and rugby league, so it's a bit of an eyesore as well. But you know, I'm not going to be too down about it. It does its job as the home of rugby league in Toronto, amongst other things. I feel like I've got to mention the Budweiser stage, despite the fact that it's clearly not a sports venue. It's comfortably the city's premier music-specific venue. Unlike most outdoor amphitheaters, a significant chunk of the seating is undercover, due to the huge roof made partially of copper. That must be to keep the snails away. Far too many roofs have collapsed under the weight of snails, you know. So there you have it. That was indeed an interesting array of stadiums. Please consider subscribing if you're new around here. And as always, thanks for watching, have a good one.